Welcome to Popcorn Movie Recaps. Today I will show you a 2022 film titled Alice. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie starts in rural Georgia plantation area owned by Mr. Paul Bennet in the United States. Alice has been enslaved in the rural Georgia plantation for years restlessly, and has been yearning for freedom. One night, Alice secretly married Joseph, her beloved husband, but Mr. Paul interrupted their marriage with a gunshot. The next morning, while working, Joseph noticed a rabbit and caught it, but Mr. Paul thought otherwise, instead whipped him badly, and Alice was serving Mr. Paul some glass of water and noticed how badly Joseph was flogged by Mr. Paul, and out of shock she dropped the glass cup on the floor and it broke. Afterward, at night, Alice and Ruthie, Joseph's mother, decided to check up on Joseph to know how he is faring. On getting to the room, other workers were treating his wound. They talked about getting away, but if they make a mistake about their plan, death is the penalty, so they changed their mind. Alice feels there should be another way. Joseph told Alice that Mr. Paul knows about their marriage. The next day, Mr. Paul married Joseph off to one of his neighbor's domestic worker, but Joseph declined. As the case may be, Joseph has no option than to accept the marriage, which implies to every other person, as they don't have an option as slaves. The agreement between Mr. Paul and brother Levi is that the first child Joseph would have will belong to brother Levi. Every Sunday, Mr. Paul forced Alice to give her natural injection to satisfy his urge. Joseph got frustrated and started looking for a way out. Spoke to one of his colleagues who told him about a story of someone who tried to escape but got killed and buried. Joseph visits the spot where the man was buried and found a lighter in the grave. Mr. Paul's son came back for holiday and Mrs. Bennet made a statement, "Can't you see?" and Alice tries finding out what she meant by such statement. While she was in her room that night, Joseph sneaked in and called her attention, showing her the lighter which belonged to someone like them. There is so much going on that they don't have an idea about, more reason they need to escape, and Joseph told Alice to wait for his signal in order for them to escape, but unfortunately their escape plan didn't go well. Joseph got shot while trying to collect Aaron's gun and Alice told him to run as fast as he can, but he didn't go so far. Aaron shot him dead and brought him back to Mr. Paul. Alice was so devastated, but she tries to keep her cool. That same night, Mr. Paul was having dinner with his son and requested Alice to sit with them on the dining table. Instead he started patronizing her beautiful body, which made her furious and attacked Mr. Paul. But he overpowered her and asked Aaron to assist him tie her up with a rope, and he put a gag over her head. After which he left her outside on the ground all through the night. The next morning, he untied her and told her he wanted to move past the whole thing. He gave her a glass jug of water, but Alice drank the water and hit Mr. Paul with the glass jug on his head. She tried escaping, he caught her and was strangling her, but Alice picked up the broken glass and stabbed Mr. Paul in his eyes. Afterwards, Alice fled for her life into neighboring woods until she came onto a highway, confused and clueless. Alongside came a truck that was driving so fast on the highway. Alice stood in the middle of the road and the truck stopped miraculously, inches right where Alice was standing. Because of the shock she collapsed in front of the truck. The truck driver by the name Frank carried her into the truck. She woke up along the way, got scared and was screaming. Frank tried to calm her down and was trying to strike a conversation with her, telling her if she knows where she is and the year, which is actually 1973. She vomited inside the truck and Franklin decided to take her to the hospital in order for her to get treatment. She wandered off inside the hospital, but he found her and took her to the front desk, asked of her name and left her. The receptionist asked for her details, but she was only able to give her first name. On the other hand, Franklin had a change of mind to check back on Alice if she is okay. But the receptionist was not giving out any information to him because he was not related to her. He walked down to the emergency ward and found Alice, then took her to his place of work. On getting there, Alice met Franklin's brother Danny. After a little talk, he took her to his place of residence, offered her some bologna and blackberry juice and gave her some clothes and a bed to sleep on. Alice is still puzzled about her new environment. The next morning, Franklin offered her breakfast and some books to joggle her memory before going to work. Alice kept herself busy looking around and took a directory trying to reach out to Mrs. Rachel Bennet. She also read some books on slavery history, thereby understanding that she has been a slave all these while and was free from it. After calling several Mr. Rachel Bennet from the directory, She was able to reach out to Mrs. Rachel Bennet, that is married to one Mr. Paul, and request to meet with her. Mrs. Rachel Bennet gave her a location and time where they can see. In the next scene, Franklin was asked to file a report of a worker stealing blackberries, but he slightly queried his brother why he should file the report. On getting home, Alice has already made dinner for him. While he was eating, he suggested she needed to get something doing to help get her memory back. However, Alice told him she has not lost her memory, that she knows everything about herself, and where she came from, that she was a slave. Franklin asked her if she knows what she was saying because he can't help her get justice. Alice told Frank that she is meeting up with someone the next day. The next morning, Franklin drove her to the diner where she is meant to meet Mrs. Rachel Bennet, and he volunteers to follow her inside, but she declined. Alice ordered for coffee while waiting for Mrs. Rachel Bennet. Mrs. Rachel Bennet came in with her son Daniel and opened a conversation with Alice about all what happened to her. That she was trying to create a safe and disciplined home for her, but Alice objected, telling her it was all a lie. Alice got into argument with Mrs. Rachel Bennet, telling her she left them to suffer, and didn't care about them. But Mrs. Rachel Bennet tried to show authority over Alice, which she bluntly threatened Mrs. Bennet. She told her that she isn't scared of her anymore. Mrs. Rachel Bennet told Alice she can't understand what freedom is about, even if it took her a million years. Alice gave her a dirty slap. Alice told Mrs. Rachel Bennet that she is freedom. Mrs. Rachel Bennet immediately left with her son. Then Frank called up Alice after seeing the whole scenario, but Alice chased her as she drove off. On the other scene, Franklin tried to calm Alice down, but Alice wanted to go back and rescue others who are still at Mr. Paul's plantation. Alice went on to make more research, before she embarked on the rescue mission. But Frank tried talking her out of the rescue mission. She refused and asked for his help, but Frank couldn't because he lost his mom fighting for the same course. Alice is trying to convince him that he can make a change. Franklin told her it would be a death sentence for a black man trying to fight for freedom in a white man's land. Frank told Alice to go ahead and fight for freedom, because she got no birth certificate, no ID, no social security, that she has nothing to lose. She bluntly told Frank that doing the right thing is not a bad idea, and he is wrong for not believing. Frank asked what her plan was and brought out guns for her. She brought out a map to find the location of the plantation, and was hoping Frank would join her, but he backed out on the last minute. Alice felt unhappy, but she was not giving up on her mission. So she went ahead with her plan. Frank was not happy while at work, and his brother came asking if he was okay. But Frank shunned him off to leave him alone. Alice is at the bus station waiting for bus, then Frank drove up to her in his truck and asked her to get in so they can go ahead with the mission together. Getting to the location, Alice started adding fuel around the land where Mr. Paul's plantation is located, and Frank made a call to a fire station. At the scene, Alice told Frank that she was proud of him, and his mom would also be proud of him for standing up for justice. They both got into the truck and drove into Mr. Paul's compound. On seeing the approaching truck, Mr. Paul asked everyone to get behind the building, but nobody moved. Rather, they stood to know who was driving into the compound. Behold, Alice and Frank came out of the truck. Alice pointed the gun at Mr. Paul. Aaron tried to get close, but Frank stopped him. Alice asked Mr. Paul to get into the house, and he told her she won't be leaving the premises this time while they both went inside. She ordered him to sit, and he asked what she wanted. Alice told him she wanted everyone to see the truth, but Mr. Paul told her that she has added more work for them. But she objected, saying they are done working for him. He lied to them to feel important, and she is not going to let him go freely, because she is smarter and better than him. Mr. Paul claimed to have given them a meaningful life, saying he never told anyone they can stay and didn't tell them they can go either. Memory of how the man who owns the lighter was shown. Mr. Paul killed and buried him in the land. He asked what she was going to do, if she intends to kill him, but Alice said she was going to make his last breath a living hell for him. He directed the answer back to Alice and stood up to attack her instead. Alice shot him in his leg, tied him up and dragged him outside. The police and firefighters are on their way. Everybody watched Alice tie Mr. Paul to a rod outside. Frank went up to meet the firefighter team, and Joseph came out staggering with a little help. Alice went closer and hugged him with tears in her eyes. One of the firefighter came up to Alice and asked for her name. Revenge is long overdue. The end. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notification, so that you can watch more videos like this. Thanks.